folks, we have got a loaded program for you today. The drive-by media is scrambling. The left is in full damage control mode. And somewhere in South Carolina, a Senate seat just opened up that is going to send shockwaves through this town for the next year and a half. We are going to get into all of it. But first, my friends, I have to tell you about what is happening to the Democratic Party right now, because they have a problem. A big, sprawling, embarrassing, impossible to paper over problem. And his name is Graham Platner. Now, you may not know Graham Platner. He was running for Senate in Maine, Democrat. Rising star, they said. The future of the party, some said. The future of the party. I love that. Every 6 months, the Democrats find a new future of the party. You'd think after the last dozen of these guys cratered, they'd stop announcing futures. But no, hope springs eternal on the left. So Graham Platner is running for Senate in Maine, and a woman named Jenny Racicot comes forward and says he raped her. And the campaign, and here's where it gets good, folks, the campaign denied it flatly, aggressively, called it a lie. His aide went out there on the record and said this did not happen. And then, 4 days later, Graham Platner suspended his campaign. Well, now, which raises a very simple question. If the story was a lie 4 days ago, what changed? I'm Rick LeBow. This is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. My friends, let's start with the most important piece of news of the weekend, and that is the passing of United States Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Lindsey Graham died Saturday evening at the age of 71 after what his office described as a brief and sudden illness. And I want to start here because whatever you thought of Lindsey Graham, and Lord knows there were days when conservatives were not exactly sending him fruit baskets, the man spent his entire adult life in service to this country. Army JAG Corps, the House, the Senate, decades. He went to Ukraine just days before he died, visiting a top-secret drone manufacturing facility. 71 years old, still working, still in the field, still fighting. You've got to respect that. Now look, Lindsey Graham was a complicated figure for the right. That's putting it gently, isn't it? There were times he drove conservatives absolutely up the wall. He had a habit, a particularly maddening habit, of expressing enormous concern, going on every Sunday show you could find, furrowing that brow, saying this or that was very, very serious, and then folding like a lawn chair when it came time to actually do something about it. We used to say he put the concerned in concerned Republican, but in his final years, he moved toward Trump. Moved toward the priorities that the American people actually elected. And he was, whatever his inconsistencies, a genuine hawk on national defense at a time when most of Washington wanted to pretend the world is a friendly place. South Carolina now has a Senate seat that needs to be filled. The governor will appoint someone, and that appointment is going to matter. That seat is going to matter. The Senate math right now does not have a lot of room for error, and every seat counts, so we will be watching that very closely. Rest in peace, Senator. Now, let's talk about what is really going on with the Democrats and their little playbook over at the Justice Department. Because this is important, my friends, and the drive-by media is not going to explain it to you the way I am about to. Todd Blanche, Trump's nominee for Attorney General, is going through his confirmation process. And what has appeared? A letter. A letter signed by approximately 1,200 former Department of Justice employees opposing his nomination. 1,200. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? 1,200 serious, distinguished DOJ alumni, all deeply concerned about the rule of law. Very grave, very solemn, very coordinated. Here's what they are not telling you. When you look at Huss signed this letter, what you find is a hyper-partisan parade. These are not nonpartisan civil servants wringing their hands over constitutional principles. These are Democrat activists with DOJ business cards from a previous life. These are the same people who spent the last several years weaponizing the Justice Department against Donald Trump and calling it independence. These are the people who turned the DOJ into a political arm of the Democrat Party and then looked you straight in the camera and told you they were protecting democracy. Now that is rich. You know, I have been saying for years, and I want you to remember this because I was right. I am always right. I say it without any false modesty whatsoever. I have been saying for years that the permanent bureaucracy in Washington is not neutral. It is not a collection of dedicated public servants dutifully serving whoever the American people elect. It is a left-wing institution. It has been packed over decades with left-wing lawyers, left-wing administrators, left-wing career employees who have one job: to slow walk, obstruct, leak, and ultimately destroy any conservative administration that walks through the door. And the DOJ is ground zero for this. They did it to Reagan, they did it to Bush, they did it to Trump in the first term. Oh, did they do it to Trump in the first term? And now, before Todd Blanche has even been confirmed, before he has sat in the chair, before he has so much as sharpened a pencil at Main Justice, here come the 1,200 alumni with their letter. This is a strategy, my friends. This is not organic. This is not spontaneous outrage from concerned public servants. This is a coordinated political operation designed to delegitimize a nominee, designed to intimidate senators who might otherwise vote to confirm, designed to give the drive-by media their Chiron. Over 1,200 former DOJ officials oppose Blanche, and let that sit there and do its work. You know what this is? This is the left doing what the left always does. They cannot win elections consistently anymore. They cannot make the case to the American people, so they work the institutions. They work the courts. They work the bureaucracy. They work the letter-writing campaigns and the media allies. They work every lever that exists outside of the democratic process, because inside the democratic process, the American people keep telling them no. Theo Wold, former Trump assistant AG, very sharp guy, was on the radio this week talking about the courts. And he made a point that I want to amplify because it is exactly right. He said the Democrats are tactical. They are strategic. They think long-term. While Republicans are celebrating winning the White House, the Democrats are thinking about district court judges, because everything that gets decided at the district court level shapes what appellate courts can even look at. Shape the district courts and you shape the law, even when you lose elections. They have been doing this for 30 years, at least. The Federalist Society on the right has done important work countering this, and the Trump administration has moved aggressively to put good judges on the bench. But the institutional left has a head start, and they know it, and they are absolutely going to use it. So when you see 1,200 DOJ alumni signing a letter against Todd Blanche, do not read it as a principled expression of legal concern. Read it as a political operation. Read it as one arm of a coordinated machine doing its part. And here's the thing, folks. Here's what I want you to really sit with. These people spent years using the Justice Department as a weapon against a sitting president and his allies. They prosecuted Trump. They raided Mar-a-Lago. They put his associates through the meat grinder. They used the full apparatus of federal law enforcement as a political instrument. And now they want to write letters about norms, about independence, about the integrity of the institution they spent years torching? The nerve. The absolute, brazen, magnificent nerve. I gotta hand it to them. I really do. You have to have a certain kind of shamelessness to pull this off, and I am almost impressed. Todd Blanche is going to be confirmed. The Senate should move quickly. And the new Attorney General is going to have an enormous job ahead of him, cleaning out an institution that has been turned over many years into something the founders would not recognize. That is what this fight is really about. Not Todd Blanche personally, not any one letter. It is about who controls the Justice Department. And after everything we have seen, the answer had better be the people who were actually elected. All right, we are moving through the roundup, folks. We got a lot of ground to cover, so let's go. First up, Graham Platner, the Maine Democrat who was running for Senate and has now suspended his campaign after Jenny Rassicot accused him of rape. And I want to return to this for a moment because the story of what his campaign did before it folded is really something. His aide, not some random surrogate, his actual aide, went out on the record and denied the accusation, called it false. And now, days later, Platner is out of the race. Make of that what you will. The drive-by media will make very little of it, I assure you. They are going to cover this as tastefully and briefly as possible, because Graham Platner is a Democrat. You know as well as I do that if this were a Republican candidate, we would have a 6-part investigative series by Wednesday, a think piece about the culture of the Republican Party by Thursday, and a congressional hearing called by Friday. But it's a Democrat, so you know how it goes. Story gets its one news cycle, everyone moves on, nobody asks hard questions about how the campaign knew enough to deny it before they knew enough to quit. The left talks endlessly about believing women, right up until the moment believing women becomes inconvenient for a Democrat they liked. Then suddenly it gets complicated. Then suddenly we need more information. Then suddenly the important thing is not to rush to judgment. I have noticed this pattern for 30 years. It has not changed once. Second story. U.S. oil production hit 21.1 million barrels per day in 2025, a record. A flat-out all-time record. And fossil fuels, you ready for this? For those of you in Rio Linda, fossil fuels still supply 86% of global energy. 86. Not 50, not 60, 86%. Now, you have been told for years by the environmentalist wackos, by the United Nations, by various celebrities who flew to climate conferences on private jets, that we are in a transition away from fossil fuels, that oil and gas are the energy of yesterday, that the world is going green, and anyone who says otherwise is a science denier. The world is burning more oil and gas than ever before in the history of mankind, right now. And what has Trump done? He has leaned in. He has said drill, produce, export. He has treated energy like the strategic and economic asset that it is, rather than the moral embarrassment the left wants it to be. And the results are speaking for themselves. Record production, energy dominance, American workers with jobs, American industry with fuel. The environmentalist wackos have been telling us the internal combustion engine is dead since 1975. They've been wrong every decade, and they're wrong now. You know what's green? Winning. You know what's clean? A strong economy where people can afford to heat their homes. The world runs on oil and gas. It has always run on oil and gas. And until something actually reliably replaces it, not just in a press release, not just in a subsidy-dependent fever dream, America should be producing as much of it as humanly possible. Because if we're not, someone else is. And that someone else is very often the Chinese Communist government, or Russia, or people who do not wish us well. I will take American energy workers over the Chi-Coms every single day of the week. Third item, and this is important, the Charlie Kirk murder case. J.D. Vance was asked about Tyler Robinson, the 23-year-old accused of killing Charlie Kirk, and the vice president said the evidence is, quote, really, really compelling. He also said he wonders who radicalized this young man. And that is the right question, folks. That is the question that the media is not going to ask. Not with any seriousness. Not with the kind of relentless investigative hunger they apply when the politics run the other way. Charlie Kirk was a young conservative voice. He built an organization that reached millions of young Americans. He believed in this country. He was killed, and the alleged killer is 23 years old. 23. And the Vice President of the United States is asking who radicalized him. That is a serious question. That is a question with an answer that somebody knows. And it deserves a real, honest, fearless answer. Not whatever sanitized version protects the right people. We are told not to expect a quick ruling on even holding a trial. Highly unusual, the lawyers are saying. Everything about this case is highly unusual, and I will tell you this. If the shoe were on the other foot, if the political valence of this case were reversed, you would hear about nothing else on every network, every newspaper, every hour of every day. We all know that. We are not going to pretend otherwise on this program. All right, my friends, before we go, I want to leave you with something. There's a poll out this week saying that just over half of Americans think capitalism is functioning not too well or not at all well. 51%. And there are people in the media who are very excited about that number. They're going to use it. They're going to wave it around. They're going to say the American people are ready for something different, something more collective. And I want to say something about that, because here's what that poll actually tells me. When people say capitalism isn't working, what they usually mean is things cost too much. My paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to, and I feel like the game is rigged for people who already have money. And you know what? On that last part, they are not entirely wrong, but the solution they are being sold is a lie. The answer to crony capitalism, to government-picked winners, to regulations written by giant corporations to crush their smaller competition, the answer to all of that is more capitalism, not less. More freedom, more competition. The answer is not to hand the keys to the same government that created the rigged game and say, now you fix it. The left has been running that con for 100 years, and every time they get the keys, prices go up. Freedom goes down. The people at the top stay exactly where they are, and everyone else gets a lecture about why it would have worked, if only they'd been given more time and more money and more power. Steve Forbes was at Freedom Fest this week, backing Trump's warnings about socialism and communism, and Forbes is right. He has been right about this for a long time. The socialist turn you are seeing in places like New York City, the direction the academic left wants to take this country, it does not lead where they tell you it leads. It leads where it always leads, and you don't need a PhD to see it. You just need to look at every country that has tried it. America is not a perfect country, but it is a great one, and the reason it is great is not complicated. Free people making free choices, building free lives, that works. That has always worked, and no amount of polling, no amount of letters from DOJ alumni, no amount of activist judges or drive-by media coverage is going to change that fact. We will miss Lindsey Graham. We will watch the Senate seat closely. We will keep our eye on the Todd Blanche confirmation, and we will be right here tomorrow. I'm Rick LeBow. This has been Rush Hour, same time tomorrow, if they let us back on.